On September 21, 2025, a dramatic chapter unfolded in the ongoing struggle for control over Crimea. Ukrainian forces launched a breathtaking assault with drones, striking at the very heart of Russia's naval and air dominance. This wasn't just any military operation, it was a resounding affirmation of Ukraine's defiance, showcasing their ingenuity, courage, and technological advancement against Russia's perceived military might and systemic corruption. As the sun rose that day, Ukrainian kamikaze drones, controlled by elite members of their special military unit, set their sights on an entity previously thought secure, Russia's B-12 Chika amphibious aircraft. These planes, revered for their operational value, symbolized Russia's ideological stronghold in Crimea, often likened to an impregnable fortress and an invincible aircraft carrier. Yet as the drones surged toward their targets, the flames that erupted consumed not only two aircraft but also obliterated the illusion of Russia's invincibility in the region forever. What truly set this operation apart was its surgical precision, a remarkable feat given that it broke through Putin's so-called air defense dome, touted as a safeguard woven from billions in advanced weaponry like the S-400 and S-500 systems. This successful strike shattered the perception that Ukraine was merely holding the line. It was now decisively showcasing its capability to infiltrate the enemy's most fortified positions, quartering in their own territory. But why focus on the B-12 Chika, dubbed the Watchers of the Sea by Russia? At first glance, this aircraft seemed antiquated. With its bulky frame and twin turboprop engines harking back to Soviet times. Yet, underneath this facade lay a formidable tool crucial to the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Operating as the fleet's surveillance asset, these aircraft executed anti-submarine missions with advanced technology, patrolling the waters and protecting against silent threats from below. More than just hunting for submarines, the B-12s were the eyes and ears of the fleet, essential for tracking NATO's movements and maintaining situational awareness over expansive seas. Their elimination meant more than just the loss of two aging aircraft. It was a catastrophic blow that left the Russian Black Sea Fleet blind and vulnerable to Ukrainian naval forces. But the assault didn't stop there. Simultaneously, Ukrainian forces orchestrated a second wave of attacks, bringing chaos to Russian operations on the peninsula. From a different vantage point, Ukrainian units closed in on a priceless asset, Russian helicopters, vital to their military framework. In a single decisive strike, 3 Mi-8 helicopters, multipurpose workhorses that had provided logistical and combative support, were obliterated whilst grounded, sending shockwaves through the Russian military. The Mi-8 helicopters held significant value, expediting troop mobilization, conducting evacuations, and resupplying crucial resources. The loss of these aircraft was detrimental to Russia's operational tempo and ability to respond to crises on the ground. Yet the real crown jewel of that second attack was a radar station crucial to Russia's air defense. This wasn't just any radar, this was the 55ZH-6 Nebo-U, a sophisticated system believed to detect everything from conventional aircraft to stealth technologies. With the Nebo-U destroyed, Russian air defenses stood exposed, unable to provide the protection once thought infallible. For Ukraine, this destruction meant a clearer path to right-sizing the air dynamics over Crimea, giving them the potential for unfettered access to engage Russian assets without the threat of detection. As the dust settled after this orchestrated assault, one question loomed large: how could an advanced air defense system crumble under the weight of relatively low-cost drones? The answer lay in systemic flaws within the Russian military infrastructure, complexities shaped by corruption, incompetence, and a doctrine ill-prepared for modern warfare's realities. The implications of these attacks extended beyond mere military strategy. They heralded the dawn of a shift in momentum within the conflict. With crucial components of air power decimated, Crimea's fate was on the precipice. What might the next targets be? With primary airbases weakened, the clock ticked down on Russian defenses. Just a day after these operations, with smoke still dissipating over Crimea, Ukraine launched yet another strike. This time, their eyes were set on the Kachcha and Belbek military airfields, the linchpins of Russian aerial might in the region. The result? A display of precision that once again underscored the gap left by the Nebo-U's destruction, proving that without its protective strategies, even the crown jewels of Russian air power could fall swiftly. The conclusion of this assault echoed one message: the fortress of Crimea was faltering. Each new attack signaled Ukraine's relentless pursuit of air superiority, pitting one side's technological innovations against another's antiquated defenses. As the scales shifted in Ukraine's favor, the Russian forces remained cornered. The narrative of invincibility had been rewritten, and the implications for the future of Crimea were undeniable. The previous segment described the twin turboprop engines that power the amphibious seagulls, aircraft that can touch down on water or land, serving as the Black Sea Fleet's eyes and ears beneath the waves. A daring question slices through the night sky: how did a handful of modest drones shatter Russia's prized unsinkable fortress? On September 21, Ukrainian operators unleashed a swarm of low-flying kamikaze sea drones. The targets were the fleet's B-12 anti-submarine planes, armed with sonar buoys and magnetic anomaly detectors. These machines could hunt silent submarines, yet they were repurposed to chase the very drones that threatened Russian warships. The drones skimmed the sea surface, their sensors whispering over the water, while the B-12s flickered on radar like distant gulls. When the attack struck, flames erupted, turning two sleek aircraft into charred wreckage. The loss was more than metal, it blinded and deafened the fleet, leaving it exposed to the Ukrainian Navy's next move. The next shock roared like a symphony gone brutal. In another corner of Crimea, Ukrainian forces turned their sights to the backbone of the Russian army, the workhorse M8 helicopters and a critical radar outpost. 3 M8s, the most versatile lift machines, lay parked, their rotors silent. Within moments, explosives tore through their hulls, metal screaming, fire licking the night. The radar, known as the NEBO-U, a mobile early warning system, was a guardian that could spot stealth jets and cruise missiles from hundreds of kilometers away. Its destruction ripped away the peninsula's visual shield. With the watchful eye gone, stealthy aircraft and cruise missiles could slip through undetected, like shadows slipping through a broken window. The question now lingers: can Russia's famed S-400 and S-500 defenses still claim invulnerability when cheap drones make them fumble like a giant hunting a mosquito? The catastrophe exposed a deeper flaw. Those billions spent on S-400 and S-500 missiles, designed for soaring jets and ballistic threats, are mismatched against tiny, low-altitude kamikaze drones built from composites. Launching a massive interceptor at a drone is as absurd as firing a cannon at a moth. Ukraine's tactics compound the problem. Decoy drones flood the radar, forcing the defense to waste precious missiles, while the true attackers slip in from alternate angles. Add to this the rot of corruption, poor training, and neglected maintenance, and the once proud shield crumbles into a paper tiger. As the smoke cleared from the night's assaults, the next question trembles in the air: will the remaining Russian airfields at Kachcha and Belbek become the next targets, sealing the fate of Russia's hold on Crimea? In a bold and devastating move, Ukraine's forces achieved a significant breakthrough on the battlefield. Using their tactical brilliance, they launched a precise strike against vital Russian military assets, severely undermining their operational capabilities. 3 Russian Mi-8 helicopters, renowned workhorses of the army, were annihilated while stationary. These helicopters are essential for troop mobility and logistics, transporting soldiers, evacuating the wounded, and resupplying ammunition. This loss dealt a crushing blow to Russia's responsiveness on the peninsula. But this wasn't all. The attack's true prize was a critical radar installation, one of Russia's most sophisticated, the 55ZH-6 NEBO-U. This radar wasn't just any detection system. It bragged about its ability to spot advanced aircraft, including stealth models like the F-35. The NEBO-U played a crucial role as the eyes and ears of Crimea's air defense, relaying vital target information to ground systems like the S-400 and S-500, giving them the edge needed in aerial combat. With its destruction, the entire defensive structure was left vulnerable, a gaping hole where once stood a formidable shield. Now, enemy missiles and aircraft could penetrate Crimean airspace with alarming ease, making Russia's once celebrated defenses appear strikingly ineffective. Rather than a robust barrier, it revealed itself as a fragile facade against Ukraine's relentless drone strikes. As the smoke from these attacks began to clear, questions arose. How could this happen? With billions invested in high-tech defensive systems, why had Russia's air defense crumbled against relatively low-cost drones? This anomaly pointed to a deeper issue within the Russian military framework. Corruption, lack of training, and poor maintenance rendered their state-of-the-art systems ineffective. The coordinated assault, which shattered 3 helicopters and a critical radar system, was not an isolated event but a symptom of a deeper deterioration within Russian military operations. What would Ukraine do next? With key assets down and air superiority within reach, the days of Russian dominance over Crimea were now numbered. The looming specter of further attacks raised the stakes dramatically. As the Ukrainian forces prepared for their next moves, a chilling tension filled the air. Nothing would ever be the same again on this strategically vital peninsula. The question lingered, what was waiting in the waves, ready to strike next? In a shocking turn of events, on September 21, 2025, Ukrainian forces turned the tide of war in Crimea. With unprecedented daring, they executed a strategic operation that struck at the very heart of Russian military pride. 2 legendary B-12 Chika amphibious aircraft, symbols of Russia's dominance and dubbed Watchers of the Sea, were taken out by Ukrainian kamikaze drones, dispelling the myth of Russia's invincibility in the region while igniting hope within Ukraine. The flames that engulfed these aircraft transformed not only the physical assets of Russia but also announced a psychological shift in the battlefield dynamics. This captivating chaos unfolded despite the presence of Putin's touted air defense systems, said to be impregnable. However, the operation raised an urgent question: how could Ukraine, with its relatively modest resources, penetrate such a supposedly formidable defense? The answer lies in fundamental flaws within Russian military technology and strategy. Designed to intercept high-altitude, supersonic threats, systems like the S-400 and S-500 were utterly ill-suited for combating Ukraine's low-flying, nimble drones. Imagine launching a complex missile to swat a fly. That's the reality for Russia's elaborate air defense systems facing these small UAVs. Simultaneously, Ukraine employed ingenious tactics that turned outdated perceptions on their head. Instead of merely focusing on singular strikes, they unleashed a swarm of decoy drones to bait Russian defenses into action, depleting their interceptor missiles. Once the Russian systems were overwhelmed, the real kamikaze drones maneuvered from various directions, exploiting weaknesses. This strategy showcased a troubling reality: the Russian military, despite its mighty reputation, is fraught with corruption and operational incompetence that leaves it vulnerable. The September 21 assault was no mere stroke of luck, it signaled a broader unraveling of Russian might in Crimea. As the dust settled, the reverberations of those actions would echo through the peninsula, diminishing the hold Russia had on the region. The elimination of those planes had repercussions that extended far beyond tactical hurdles. It represented a symbolic defeat of Russian air superiority. With defenses compromised, observers eagerly anticipated Ukraine's next moves. As the aftermath of the attack began to unfold, the realization set in: this was not the end but merely an introduction to an even more intense conflict. On September 22, another blow landed. Ukraine launched simultaneous strikes against the Kachcha and Belbek military airfields, critical strongholds for Russian forces. The previous day's destruction of the Nebo U radar left these bases exposed, highlighting just how swiftly fortunes can change in warfare. With every successive operation, the fortress that once felt impervious began to crumble. Ukrainian forces aimed for complete air superiority, cutting down Russian aircraft and bolstering their own ranks. Could Russia's defenses hold against the relentless tide of Ukrainian strategies? The potential for disaster loomed over the Russian military, trapped within its own fortified positions. Seemingly unable to reclaim control as the onslaught escalated. In this deadly game of chess, Ukraine capitalized on Russia's vulnerabilities while exposing the fragile underbelly of its military machine. Every drone, every targeted operation, chipped away at Moscow's claims of supremacy in Crimea, igniting the hopes of those yearning for a change in the status quo. The balance of power was shifting, and the battle for Crimea was far from over. Summary of previous events: the decline of Russia's military effectiveness has become dramatically evident. Corruption, negligence, and incompetence have decimated their operational capacity. Systems that appear flawless on paper crumble in combat, revealing an army that consistently fails to deliver. Ukraine's ability to swiftly breach Russian air defenses signals a profound rot within the supposed powerhouse of military technology. On that fateful day, September 21, the Ukrainian forces unleashed a devastating assault that was not just a mere tactical victory, it marked the dawn of a new chapter in the Crimean conflict. With their aerial defenses reduced to a sieve, the occupying forces, once arrogant, were now revealed to be incapable of maintaining their stronghold. What targets lay next in Ukraine's crosshairs? The answer came swiftly, just a day later. The skies above the peninsula were still shrouded in the remnants of smoke when Ukrainian forces launched a second wave of attacks on September 22, aiming for the key military airfields of Kachcha and Belbek. These were more than just bases, they were the very backbone of Russia's naval air power. Kachcha housed the critical aerial units of the Black Sea Fleet, while Belbek served as the principal station for Russia's most advanced aircraft, the Su-27 and Su-30. The synchronized strike on these targets underscored the vulnerability that the destruction of the Niboyu radar had caused. With their early warning system now a mere memory, Russian air defenses could no longer shield even their most treasured assets. This wasn't just a setback, it was the final nail in the coffin for Russian dominance in the skies above Crimea. The rumble of engines and the distant boom of missiles painted a grim picture for every soldier and civilian on the peninsula. The fortress they once believed unconquerable was crumbling before their eyes. With ash and smoke swirling through the air, it was clear, this stronghold was no longer invincible. The tides had turned, and the quest for complete aerial supremacy was now within Ukraine's grasp. What would happen next as the peninsula's defenses lay exposed? The answer is in the winds of change that are sweeping through Crimea, hinting at a reckoning long overdue. As darkness enveloped the Crimean peninsula, an ominous shift in power was underway. The clash on September 21, 2025, marked a pivotal chapter in the brutal saga surrounding Crimea. Ukrainian forces unleashed a daring surprise attack that rattled the foundation of Russian military dominance. Why did this attack send ripples of fear throughout the ranks of the Russian military leadership? In a well-coordinated assault, Ukrainian drones, guided by skilled operators from elite military units, targeted the legendary B-12 Chika amphibious aircraft, the so-called Watchers of the Sea. This attack was not merely an attempt to disable aging machinery, it struck at the very heart of Russian pride. These seemingly obsolete aircraft, with their retro-Soviet design, played a crucial role as the fleet's eyes and ears, essential for anti-submarine warfare and reconnaissance. When fiery destruction claimed these aircraft, it didn't just obliterate metal, it shattered the myth of Russia's invulnerability, forcing an eerie silence upon the once unstoppable might of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. But the assault did not conclude there. Concurrently, another Ukrainian operation tore through the skies, targeting Mi-8 helicopters, integral to the Russian ground response and mobility. 3 of these versatile machines were destroyed while idle, dealt a devastating blow to Russian operations. And in the shadows of these assaults lay a critical radar station, a linchpin of air defense, now turned to rubble. With its advanced capabilities silenced, Ukraine's enemies were rendered effectively blind. How could such a mighty defense system collapse against lightly armed UAVs? The answer lay in the very structure of Russian military doctrine. The air defense systems, heralded as unrivaled, proved incompetent against low-flying, agile drones. The strategic blunders were compounded by corruption and neglect at every level. The majestic towers of air defense crumbled, revealing deep fissures, weaknesses exploited by savvy Ukrainian tactics. Alongside the tangible losses, the specter of fear and anxiety loomed larger than ever over the Russian occupation forces. The fortress of Crimea, once perceived as impregnable, now stood on the brink of collapse. As debris fell, the once proud legacy of Putin's annexation was transformed into a strategic nightmare, a haunting reminder of misplaced confidence. Panic rippled through the ranks, and whispers of impending doom reached the ears of soldiers and civilians alike. Was this perceived stronghold crumbling before their eyes? The events unfolding after September 21, a humanitarian catastrophe, marked not just a military setback but a profound societal collapse. The lives of countless individuals were entwined with dreams of stability, now buried beneath the wreckage of a faltering empire. As Ukraine's military capabilities sharpened, their strategy aimed not just at remaining threats but sought total domination. The final targets were clear, establishing unwavering air superiority and piercing the defense to strike at the heart of control centers, supply chains, and critical infrastructures, most notably, the Kerch Bridge. A once celebrated symbol of Russia's claim over Crimea. Could this be the harbinger of Putin's ultimate undoing? Every echo of war now felt like a beckoning to a new reality, one that spelled the beginning of the end for Russian forces in Crimea. When castles fall, they carry with them not only the weapons of war but the shattered hopes of those who believed in their strength. How long before the repressive grip begins to fade, leaving behind only shadows of the empire that was? In this darkened landscape, one thing became startlingly clear: the winds of change were blowing fiercely, and Crimea was slipping from Putin's grasp. The aftermath of the harrowing attacks on September 21, 2025, unfolded in Crimea like a chilling horror story. It wasn't just a military defeat, it was the heart-wrenching collapse of dreams and hope, echoing through the rubble of what was once a fortress of security and prosperity. The reality sank in with a devastating clarity. Crimea had become a battleground, no longer a haven, but a target zone for Ukraine's advanced weaponry. Those who had settled there under the illusions of a bright future were now caught in a nightmare, fleeing with only the barest essentials, like shadowy specters in a horror film. Amidst the chaos, the Kerch Bridge, once heralded as a triumphant symbol of Russia's grip on Crimea, transformed into a treacherous escape route. This bridge, opened with great fanfare by Putin in 2014, now stands as a grim reminder of failed promises. Tens of thousands of residents and newfound emigrants were rushing toward it, their faces tinged with panic as if fleeing a sinking ship. Fear gripped the peninsula, feeding a frenzy that no one could contain. As vehicles of all shapes and sizes, from the sleekest luxury cars to decades-old Ladas, converged toward the bridge, a massive traffic jam erupted. These convoys stretched for miles, transforming Crimea's once bustling main thoroughfare into a stagnant swamp of desperation. Was it mere chaos, or a prelude to catastrophe? Each passenger clutched their scant belongings tightly, whispering prayers that a storm's shadow missile wouldn't shatter their fragile escape. Within this frenzy, an unsettling social divide became painfully clear. High-ranking officials and well-off businessmen maneuvered through secret escape routes, waving permits like talismans, while everyday citizens, teachers, doctors, and workers, were left in a nightmarish gridlock. They had once been the fervent supporters of Putin's vision for a Russian-led Crimea, but now, they felt abandoned, their optimism turning to bitter regret. As air raid sirens blared in the distance, the hope for a peaceful exit mingled with the palpable tension of impending doom. Was there any way out for those rebuilding their lives amid the crumbling edifice of imperial ambition? With each passing moment, their chances faded, sinking beneath the weight of a failed dream. The world watched, starkly aware. This wasn't merely an evacuation, it symbolized the tragic unraveling of an empire's grand illusion. In this dramatic tale, can the fate of a population, once enchanted by promises, truly turn as their dreams become dust? The Kerch Bridge, haunted by desperate souls, now leads only to uncertainty, an emblem of a shattered empire. On September 21, 2025, a new chapter was etched into the harsh narrative of war in Crimea. The Ukrainian armed forces executed an audacious and pivotal operation against Russia's naval and aerial dominance on the peninsula. This was no ordinary assault, it was a resounding declaration of Ukraine's courage and technological prowess over Russia's entrenched arrogance and flawed military strategies. Picture the scene: Ukrainian kamikaze drones, guided by elite operators of a special military unit, struck at the heart of Crimea, targeting what Vladimir Putin had long considered an impenetrable fortress. The apparent target? The Russian Black Sea Fleet's B-12 Chika amphibious aircraft, notorious for their role in the fleet's surveillance operations. As the drones descended, flames engulfed not just two aircraft but also the myth of Russian invulnerability in Crimea. This operation achieved surgical precision against a backdrop of Putin's touted air defense systems, famously fortified with billions in advanced technology. What made this momentous attack startling was not only the significance of the target but the sheer audacity of the assault itself. With these two aircraft destroyed, Ukraine sent an undeniable message: it was no longer merely on the defensive but also capable of striking deeply into the enemy's stronghold. The question on everyone's lips: why target the B-12 Chika, seen by the Russian forces as their watchers of the sea? At first glance, the B-12 might appear as a relic, an outdated beast from the Soviet era, clunky and powered by twin turboprop engines. Yet, beneath this misjudged exterior lay critical capabilities, vital for anti-submarine warfare. With their advanced sonar buoys and anomaly detectors, these aircraft were essential for tracking enemy submarines. In recent months, they had been on the hunt for Ukraine's own kamikaze sea drones, elusive predators capable of sinking Russian warships. The destruction of the B-12S was far more than the loss of antiquated machines. It was akin to blinding and deafening the Russian Black Sea Fleet, leaving it vulnerable and disoriented. This moment set the stage for a second shocking blow, with Ukrainian forces preparing a follow-up strike. A deadly symphony of destruction was unfolding across the peninsula. In another part of Crimea, Ukrainian forces targeted critical assets, Russian helicopters and a crucial radar station pivotal to the air defense network. The destruction of 3 Mi-8 helicopters and a sophisticated radar system, capable of detecting threats from hundreds of kilometers away, sent shockwaves through Russian command. This operation crippled the operational capabilities of the Russian military on the peninsula, leaving them floundering in the midst of chaos. With every blow delivered, the essence of Russian aerial supremacy disintegrated. Why was such a formidable Russian air defense system faltering against relatively inexpensive Ukrainian drones? The underbelly of Russian military doctrine revealed systemic flaws and corruption that rendered even the mightiest defenses ineffective against Ukraine's innovative tactics. As these coordinated attacks continued, tears of despair and disbelief filled the eyes of the Russian forces. They had underestimated Ukraine's resolve, and now the grip of Russian power on Crimea was slipping away. The balance of power was shifting dramatically as Ukraine prepared to strike again. Day turned into night, but the echoes of the past battle still resonated. With the scent of smoke lingering in the air, September 22 brought yet another offensive, this time targeting military airfields that served as bastions of Russian air might in Crimea. As explosions lit the night sky, the continuity of Ukrainian strikes illustrated the growing pressure on Russian strongholds. With each passing hour, the realization dawned upon observers, the fate of Crimea was changing. Ukraine was on the offensive, intent on achieving air supremacy and driving Russian forces back. This rapid succession of attacks hinted at a profound transformation, a metamorphosis not just for Ukraine, but for the entire strategic landscape of the Black Sea. The echoes of past empires were calling forth a new balance, where an ascendant Turkey could seize the opportunity left in the aftermath of Russia's faltering grip. The Black Sea was poised for a seismic shift, and Ukraine was the catalyst igniting this change. In a shocking twist of fate, Ukraine's armed forces scripted a groundbreaking chapter in the harrowing saga of war over Crimea on September 21, 2025. This marked not simply an attack but a resonant clash echoing through the annals of military history. Ukrainian drones launched a daring offensive against Russia's naval and aerial might, targeting what had long been deemed an impenetrable fortress. Imagine the scene, the sun creeping over the horizon as Ukrainian operators directed drones to a target that Russia had safeguarded as untouchable. The B-12 Chika, a relic of Soviet-era aircraft, seemingly outdated, were recognized by Ukraine as vital threats. These ambiguous seagulls weren't merely antiquated tools, they were the sharp eyes of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, charged with hunting down enemy submarines and safeguarding maritime traffic. Their destruction symbolized more than the downing of aircraft. It was the obliteration of Russia's inflated image of invulnerability, reduced to ashes in the flames of a fateful strike. But the audacity didn't end there. In a simultaneous operation, Ukrainian forces targeted helicopters vital to Russian ground operations, catching the enemy off guard and crippling their logistical capabilities. In an age where military power often seems omnipresent, 3 Mi-8 helicopters were raised while parked, an unthinkable loss for any military. More significant still, a sophisticated radar system instrumental in Russia's air defense network was dismantled, leading to a catastrophic void in their capability to detect incoming threats. How could this happen? Russia boasted advanced weaponry, with claims of nearly impenetrable air defenses. Yet Ukraine's relentless tactics, launching decoy drones to stretch their defenses thin, exposed the flaws buried at the core of Russia's military doctrine. The story unfolded like a dark orchestral symphony, revealing how crumbling maintenance, lack of discipline, and pervasive corruption birthed a paper tiger, fueling Ukraine's piercing resurgence. As smoke billowed from the skies of Crimea, one question lingered: if Ukraine could undermine such formidable defenses, how long until they reignite their pursuit towards total control? The answer unraveled swiftly. Just a day later, on September 22, Crimea bore witness to further carnage. The Ukrainian forces struck again, targeting vital military airfields that anchored Russian supremacy. The reverberations of these aerial assaults were profound. Turkey's influence in the Black Sea soared as the power dynamic shifted irreversibly, the Montreux Convention now placed firmly in their hands. With competitors like Russia diminished, Turkey emerged as the singular force, dictating naval movements and energy corridors vital to Europe. This pivotal moment transformed regional security, marking Turkey as the chief guarantor against Russian threats, forever altering the strategic landscape of Eastern Europe. As the dust settled, Putin's ambitions to encircle Turkey and establish a foothold crumbled, all orchestrated by his own miscalculations. What began as an invasion turned into a masterclass in unintended consequences. Reshaping alliances and capabilities in ways few could have anticipated. The tale of Ukraine's bravery and strategic genius signaled a new dawn for the region, raising a chilling realization: the tides of war had shifted, and history had just marked its pages with ink from the blood of old empires. In the end, would history remember this moment as a desperate stand or the orchestrated rise of a local power that flipped the game on its head? Only time would tell, but the stage was undeniably set for a new era in the Balkans. As we reflect on the events of September 21, 2025, we see a pivotal moment that signifies the birth of Ukraine as a formidable naval force. In a striking maneuver, Ukrainian forces launched a groundbreaking assault that shattered the illusion of Russian dominance in the Black Sea. This significant defeat not only symbolizes a pivotal shift in military power, but it also places the keys to the Black Sea firmly in the hands of Turkey, a determined NATO ally eager to reshape the region's dynamics. Imagine a potent symbol of control and influence now threatened, as Russia's once mighty Black Sea fleet faces its gradual demise. What is the cost of ambition when it turns into a strategic blunder? The military failure in Crimea represents more than just the loss of territory, it marks the conclusion of over 2 centuries of Russian stronghold in this vital maritime arena. The unfolding narrative of the Black Sea is no longer scripted in Moscow but, instead, is being rewritten by Ankara and its allies in the West. This transformation is momentous. The balance of power in the Black Sea has shifted towards Turkey, previously overshadowed by Russian might. What this means for regional security is profound. As nations like Romania, Bulgaria, and Georgia reclaim their agency from the specter of the Russian fleet, Turkey emerges as a powerful guarantor of safety and stability. The energy routes that once suffered under constant threat are now revitalized, allowing for a future free from the domination of a now fractured naval presence. As the dust settles over Crimea, we witness the emergence of a new era, a landscape where Ukraine has rapidly become a key player in defense and maritime strategy. What does the future hold for the Black Sea? Are we on the brink of witnessing a complete reconfiguration of alliances and power dynamics? If Russia underestimated the resilience and ingenuity of Ukraine, what other miscalculations might lay ahead? Only time will reveal how this striking turn of events unfolds in the chapters of history yet to be written.